Welcome to Season 2 of the Global Architect Alliance with your host, Jason Boyle. This is episode 13 and concludes Season 2. And I'm happy to share that this will be the best of Season 2. So we're looking back on the best bits from all of our 13 episodes. Now we're talking the Metaverse and environmental considerations. We're talking with Duron from LA. We're talking project managers and many other subjects. So please listen to this and please let me know what you think. We will be taking a break for the summer, but we will be back for Season 3. Please don't forget to subscribe and share with your peers. And please leave a review. We are also now taking sponsors for Season 3. If you would like to sponsor this podcast, please contact me at globalarchitectalliance.com. So our first question of this final episode, we look back to episode 1, which was Architects in the Metaverse. And I asked this question of Anabel, who is an architectural assistant of Metz Forbes Knight, about the environmental aspects to the Metaverse. What should we be considering? We're also joined by Jim Rooney of E2 Architects as well on this particular question. This Metaverse, and autonomous vehicles and is just enormous. It's just really incredible to get your head around. So if we are to be building these huge data centers that is required, I'm just kind of, what do you think are the main issues environmentally? And my thing is, should they be built in sort of cold climates, to cope?
Effectively, I was quite lucky that I was able to go visit some data centers in the Netherlands, and the way that they're designed is essentially to have a hot aisle and a cold aisle, and the servers need to be kept at an optimum temperature of 16 degrees, and the amount of energy required and the diesel required in order to keep the servers at the optimum temperature, otherwise you'll lose all the data, there's a lot of energy, and the data centers also need to have a redundancy. So even though you have one, you have a clone of it in case one of them powers down. And the reason we put them in cold climates is because you have natural cooling. Now, the thing with the metaverse is that the hardware it's not sustainable at all. If we could move to software, that'd be great. But crypto mining, and general data storage is incredibly damaging for our planet. And the fact that we are trying to use more renewable energy to sustain it, and then we're at the same time mining neodymium, which is the rare earth material required for renewable energy sources, is the digital ecology is so vast, and it is difficult to wrap your head around, of course. And when I was visiting these data centers, especially in the Netherlands, it was quite interesting. They had their own wind farms that they had sourced, but because it was in such close proximity to the city centre, it was actually designed by an architect, whereas the facade was, whereas the interior was designed just by engineers, because these are not built for humans, they're built for computers, right? But there is a level of urgency that perhaps architects do have a role in this physical aspect of the digital metaverse, because when we have to start putting servers in our bedrooms to try and perhaps use it as a radiator, there is a level of domesticity that could be added. But yeah, there's a lot of people that render that try and offset it with, the amount of power needed just to render an image sometimes can take over 20 hours. So effectively, I think there's a website that you can use where you can plant a tree and you can offset your carbon footprint, because digital art is, it's not good for the environment. It's essentially a computer. Yeah, sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there, but I feel very strongly about
So do
this.
I. Yeah. It's fascinating actually hearing you talk about that, and in a way, Jason, I'm sure you can relate to this because this was the other thing that was intriguing about the conversation so far is that actually architects have a role to play in this very thing, right? So, as a company, we've always been about sustainability and making sure that everything that we do is conscious of the impact on the climate. And I hadn't even really, it's amazing really that I hadn't considered the impact that this stuff may contribute. But yeah, it's almost like the new nuclear designers, architects, Jason, of which you are one. This is the next thing, right?
Yeah, we're going to need much more nuclear power plants, maybe to power the data centers to run the metaverse. There's a controversial statement there. And the question that we were posing here is our project manager's value for money. And in this question, Julia Starzyk, who is a project manager, turned the question back onto me. And what was really interesting is that Karolina, a project manager at Buro Four, finds that architects are now becoming less technical. Please listen into this response.
The only representative of the architects here on stage. Don't you think that putting such a huge responsibility only on the architects is a little bit too much for one profession?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And there'd be no way that I could deliver the job that I'm delivering if I was looking after project management because it is a profession. Um, I I wanted to pose this question to you all because there was a battle. It seemed to be a battle many years ago, probably in the 90s, when I think the project manager was really rising and taking away, and we've had a lot of quantity surveyors, as you may know, over the years, move from doing QSing and turning their hand to project management. I think it's changed now, whereby people will move to project management as a profession, that it's seen as a profession, and rightly so. So, I do see the benefits, and I'm saying this as an architect. Um, I don't always like what project managers say, I do have my battles with them, and it's all part of getting the job done. So yeah, but I'm interested if someone has a different opinion and who's maybe an architect or in the architectural space who wants to come forward and give maybe a different opinion. But yeah, thank you, Julie. I hope I answered that question.
Of course you did. I mean, I work with a lot of architects and I work on quite a few schemes, with different caliber of architects and different projects as well, and in different capacity. And funny enough, the project always comes back to the point of something goes wrong. At some point, something always goes wrong. So, we have this smelly egg on our hands, and then who's going to tell the client? And somehow, usually, it's Julia who has to do that, right? So it's quite, yeah, it's quite ungraceful as well for us. I do know that, we have to sometimes tell off architect and we have to, keep you down from whatever it is you aspire to. But that's kind of finding the compromise in the profession as well, right? Carolina, what do you think? Because you work on much larger schemes than I do.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's horses for courses. So, it's architects and project managers. For me, they're almost two different skill sets because, frankly, I want the architect to have the vision. Um, you know, they are, in my eyes, creatives. They're not the sort of nuts and bolts and how they're not necessarily, they don't have to be strategic about certain decisions, or maybe in terms of applying it to the design, yes, but I and I want that to happen. That's why, although I've also, of course, I had not so nice conversations and with architects, but I think the true strength of a good PM is allowing people to excel in what they're really good at. And, a lot of the architects, I do find it quite interesting how a lot of the architects that I work with, they are also becoming slightly, and maybe this is just the high end sort of resi or high end commercial fit out, etc. But they are becoming less and less technical, and the detailing that I see, and maybe it's the evolvement of interior architecture rather than pure architecture, but sometimes it's very useful for a very capable architect to come in who's actually fantastic at coordinating design. And I think that's where the project management in architecture should probably stop, because it's still very much related to the design, but you definitely use some of the skills, maybe some of the soft skills that a PM would normally use in their job. But yeah, definitely, I do believe that people should work to their strengths. So for me, architects are best.
Next, we go to episode 6 and we speak to Duron, based in downtown LA. Now, Duron is a live streamer on TikTok who glides through the streets late at night on his one-wheel hoverboard. We ask about his love for LA and architecture and how he saved a British couple who got lost and ended up in Skid Row. And that video went viral.
Yeah, and yeah, I did just for the audience, because not people might not know what it is that you kind of glide through the streets of LA, and we're on. Just describe what you sort of conceive the one wheel is, because it's not a huge thing in England.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's basically a snowboard is the closest thing I can relate it to, like urban snowboarding. So it's an electric board that balances on one wheel, and it pretty much feels like you're snowboarding on asphalt or concrete, and you're just exactly like you said, gliding around. Out here we call it floating, because at some point when your body gets accustomed to build up the muscles and everything, sometimes you don't even feel the board under your feet, and you really do feel like you're floating. And it's a wild experience. It's a lot of fun though.
It is, and I think one of the things that really it does make it really really special is, I watched a lot of walking videos on YouTube, and
Hmm.
the problem is with them, the pace is so slow, and people like these days haven't got that sort of attention span, and when you watch you doing these live videos, it's a pace that kind of is like watching a movie. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah, that
it,
makes
it's
sense.
like, yeah, in you're experiencing architecture, urban environments, buildings, back alleys, but you're experiencing them at a pace, and that I think that is the trick with the thing that you do. And so my next question for you is kind of what parts of the city of LA at night do you kind of enjoy the most? But also I want to know is which areas do you kind of enjoy the least, and just the reasons why. So the best and the worst kind of thing.
Okay. I definitely like the financial district, I think, the most, because I have a construction background and I've always been into building stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, architecture, although I'm definitely not on your level of architecture, I'm a fan of it. So I like that. I think it's really gorgeous inside, the financial district. So I like that area a lot. The views are just, they're kind of I feel like a lot of times it's very inspirational to me to see that, like, for example, I can look at the U.S. Bank Tower, and at the end of the day, it's like, whether it's a company or a person, but like basically somebody owns that building, and I think that's just amazing that someone can do that. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. To me, it's just very inspirational, I guess. But least favorite, I would definitely say Skid Row. It's a fascinating place to me, and that's what kind of drew me there, just curiosity. But it's like things get so wild back there sometimes, and it's just last night, like we went through there and ended up picking up a tail. This guy falling on a bicycle, and so that's never comforting. But I don't know. I guess TikTok loves it, so I end up going through there quite a bit.
I think that's absolutely true. What you just said there about Skid Row.
Yeah,
People want to see and experience Skid Row, and I think this is probably not a question you maybe thought I was going to ask you, but just recently, I think in the last couple of weeks, you kind of saved a British couple who
right.
were walking into Skid Row, and they were lost, and I mean that. I'm not going to call you a superhero, but it feels like that because you're out there and you are helping people who like lost tourists in the middle of the night. Just kind of talk me through, what happened there.
Yeah, on that particular night, it was just a really active night, and doing the regular tour, streaming, and yeah, I just happened to be going through there, and I saw the couple, um, very nicely dressed, and it's just that stood out a lot right there, especially like being back there so frequently. You tend to notice small details, like things out of place. Sometimes even like cars. Like you'll notice them moving around, posting up. I've seen that before. But so yeah, that one was like an easy one. It was just like a bright red flag, pretty much. So I knew something was wrong because there's no way they should have been back there.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, that's what got me to stop and just be like, hey, you guys all right? Because yeah, I saw at first it was, the part that's not on the video that only the live stream saw is at first it was kind of like a joke almost, because he even says something like, oh, like Uber, like you gonna give us a ride? And I was like, yeah, like hop on. But then the situation changed real quick because I noticed, you know the guys on the bicycles, like, circling around kind of thing, just their eyes were locked on us. And it's like, I've seen that look before. It's a very malicious look. A lot of times you can see something's about to go down just by their expression. Like you can see it in their face. And it's a look I've seen many times. So I was just like, it was like the switch flipped. I was like, hey, this shit's getting serious real quick. We got to go. And that's why I tell them, like, hey, you guys are about to get robbed right now or some shit. I'm only assuming they're about to. Could have been something worse. Who knows? But it was more than likely they're probably about to get robbed, in my opinion. But yeah. So yeah, I just directed them basically going to like turn around and go back where they came from, and then I just kind of stayed with them because even though they were walking away, they're just staring. And I was just like, wow, like, because a lot of times it's like you can prevent stuff because it's like the last thing they want is a blatant witness. So in a
yeah,
way, I feel like the live stream helps keep me safer in a way because it's like they're gonna process that as like, oh, I'm already exposed, kind of thing.
yeah.
So yeah, I think honestly, like, yeah, like although I'm out there by myself, um, like or literally, I feel like at the same time I'm not, because it's like I got so many people watching with me. It makes me feel a little bit safe.
That sort of live that happened, um, it kind of went viral, that video. You sort of took what happened on the live video and posted it on your account. And what happened then? Because I think it's been viewed millions of times.
Yeah, it's got about, I think, 10 million views now, but I
Wow.
figured it would get views. I didn't expect to go viral, nor did I think it would be like my most viral video so far. Um, but yeah, it was Newsweek had reached out to me and wanted me to comment on this article that they had posted, and a bunch of other like Instagram pages have reached out or either reposted it or have asked for rights for it, that kind of thing. That's very common. But even the restaurant that they were on their way to reached out to me. I've never actually replied to them. But they offered me like like a free meal or drink or something like that experience. Um, so
Oh,
yeah, I
wow.
was definitely really unexpected and I guess like humbling at the same time. I don't know. It was like this whole TikTok experience. It's all very new to me, and there's like always new situations coming up. So it's like I just kind of go with the flow, pretty much. But yeah, overall, I'd say it was a very humbling experience.
Now, the next question is from episode 7. We're joined by Anand Kapoor, who is founder of Image Foundry, based in the UK and also New Delhi in India. He's worked for Zaha Hadid and many other big clients. And I asked him, what is the main difference between the East and the West in terms of CGI?
Between the East and the West, but maybe you can answer partly that in your reply, but it's who engages you. Do architects engage you, or do the clients engage you now directly? And I guess that'll change depending on the cost of the project and the the kudos of the project. Just I'm interested in how people engage with you for business.
Well, okay, so it's interesting. We've worked with the full gambit of people. I've worked with Zara Hadid. I've worked with architects, and we've also worked with developers like MR and other major global players. So, and their needs and their wants are extremely different. So, what an architect would want from a CGI and what a developer would want from a CGI are totally opposite ends almost. Where they do meet is when it comes for planning permissions and things like that. There is some middle ground that they both need the images for the same purpose.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the needs and desires are different. The interesting thing with India is that India is not as mature a market necessarily as, say, the UK. The UK is a slightly maturer market and it understands. So, we were talking recently with a client, and there was an interest to go back to pen and ink to a certain extent, but they realized that without having an actual visualization and a realistic visualization, it doesn't necessarily get them to what is expected in the marketplace. So the UK expects realism, and India just expects a representation. It doesn't have to be spectacularly photo real, and it's much more. That's a lot to be based on price sensitivity and the amount of people that are able to produce something. So, in a way, we have stopped doing work uh, in India unless we get requested. We're doing an interesting project now in India for a design company and a furniture design company where they are designing, taking Italian designs from Italy and creating those designs in India. And we are actually creating visuals for them and modeling each and every item of furniture. And that's not unusual. IKEA's doing it as well these days. And I think as the world starts realizing the market, India as a market starts realizing the potential of CGI and how CGI could be used, it'll start exploring things further. The difference is also traditionally labor's been cheaper in India, so it's sometimes cheaper to get a photographer to take photos, create a whole set, and or create a whole mock-up and actually take the photos. But the issues with that is that, especially during the pandemic, those things were not so possible to do. And people started realizing that the value of something like CGI gives them the options and the flexibility to be able to do whatever they want in a virtual environment. And the way CGI is coming up, it's very difficult to tell real from computer generated.
Now a word from our sponsor. PPL is a global health technology provider which specializes in the eradication of bacteria, viruses, and pathogen risks using a range of germicidal UVC devices. Tried and tested and proven for 80 plus years in industries and environments that otherwise can present a serious risk to human health and safety, such as in operating theatres, laboratories, biosciences, meat production facilities. PPL are the only UVC health technology provider on the British government's coronavirus COVID-19 response list of key suppliers and are catalogued by the CCS under medical services. You can find more about PPL biosafety at www.ppl-biosafety.com. The next bit of content comes from episode 10, and we were joined by Stephen Drew and Bill Luza, and we talked about how to write a killer CV. So in this discussion, we talk about some key issues with CVs from both a UK and US perspective, looking at the one-page CV, also how long hiring managers will look at your CV, and also the thing around cover letters.
I tell you my bugbear before we have a little interlude.
Yeah, before we go to Bill, yeah, go for it.
Well, thank you, Bill. You've been patiently there. My bugbear, right, and is when I get a CV file that basically it will be like new CV 2021 version 2. I'm like, I don't even know who that is. You know, when you've got like 3 of these on your computer,
Yeah, I know.
you don't even know where they are. And I know this because when I worked at Accra Larry in-house in architecture practice, trying to process all the CVs that came in, I would just lose people sometimes. So you have to put your Jason Boyle CV.pdf, Stephen Drew CV.pdf. So I'm glad I got that off my chest. Bill, welcome so much to the stage. So good to have you here. How are you doing?
Hey guys, good to be here with you all
Nice
today
to
and
see you.
talking about this. Yeah, I haven't been around for a while, but just been nose to the grindstone. But yeah, good topic, and I've been in and out listening and had some calls in between. But a couple of key things that when you guys were talking about it, that I thought about is, and especially these days with the global job market, like I know years ago with my when my studio was based in Washington D.C. and I had put to hire some interns, and I was blown away that I had applicants from all over the world, and you know, you have one little position and you get 500 applicants, and they're from all over the world. And one key thing was that, you know, depending where you're applying for, and like when you guys were discussing it and saying the paper size, if it's A4 or whatever it is, and then that's the thing of okay, so where are you applying for this job, and is it A4? Is it 8.5 by 11? You know, is it because of you might be based in a different country and you're applying for a job somewhere else, or you originally were from another country, so you're used to a certain standard. So that's a key thing because you know, employer gets the resume if it's a PDF or if it's a hard copy or whatever, and it's an odd size to them. And you know, in a way, they're like, "What am I going to do with this?" Because it's, you know, you think gone are the days of physical files, but when they do interview, they are going to have a physical copy, and then they are going to have it somewhere. So it little things like that, and then when you guys were talking about how many pages, in the US, it's always been a hardcore one page. We don't care how many years of experience you have, if you're fresh out of school, if you're, 20, 30 years in the field, put it in one page. And nobody ever says, can it be a double-sided one page? They just say one page. And so it's a key thing that if it went to 2 or 3 pages, it I guess it's this sort of thought in their mind that you couldn't condense it. You couldn't be uh, fine tuned. You couldn't design your resume. And so for me, at my point in my career, I remember times when I was having to submit a CV because you have a project that requires that as part of from the client or something like that, and thinking, how am I going to get myself in a one page? And you just get creative about it. You get creative about using the margins, and how you fit things on the page. Um, so a lot of little tidbits like that. And then that was hilarious, Jason, about your beer stunt. um
Thanks.
I thought you better research what they like to drink on their beer 30, because if you give them something that they think is piss, then there you go.
It
um
definitely wasn't
but
Foster's. It definitely wasn't Foster's, Stephen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And but like that is a thing though, that for me, like, say when you get 500 CVs, and be it that they're coming in the mail or they're coming an email with a PDF, and however you do it, when you're scanning those things, like for me, I do a first round where I am just looking at them a few seconds, and I'm marking them A, B, or C, and they're going into folders of just saying, because you have 500, you got to get it down to maybe 100, then you got to get it down to 20, and then maybe 5, because you're not going to interview more than a few people for the position. And so in a few seconds, you open their resume, you look at it, you scan it, like you guys were saying, absolutely don't want a glaring typo. You're looking at how they formatted it, because they are in architecture and they should be knowing how to compose a page. And that's one thing, is that over the years I've seen that in architectural schooling and training, they really should have students take some sort of graphic design or typesetting or some course like that, interdisciplinary, because architects are just notoriously bad about presenting themselves. And so you scan it, and you're just going on what catches your eye, and do they have a cover letter? Another key thing, depending on which country you're applying in, but in the US, is it's always been a standard that you have to have a cover letter. And is the cover letter a second page? How does it lead you in? If you're emailing it, can you have the email be your cover letter? What's the proper thing? And that's always a tough one, because you say, well, they're reading an email, but then these might be printed out, given, an HR person might be sitting at a table reviewing these. So you do want a cover letter, short and sweet. And if I open a file from an applicant and I see that the cover letter in the first sentence looks like it's cut and paste, then they just go in the C or D file. I'm not, no thanks.
Yes, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, yeah. And so it really is that first couple of seconds. I guess that's the whole thing I'm saying, is you open it up, you all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, that's an odd paper size. First impression, odd. Okay, is it something that impressed you, or is it something that just is just complicating your day? The cover letter, is it a cut and paste, or does it appear like that they're actually applying for your job? um it's amazing how many you'll see that they actually made a mistake because they were copy paste, and somewhere in the body it says something about a different firm, and you go, oh come on, really? And so, like you guys were mentioning, it's always good to have a buddy like proofread if you can, because we'll miss those things in the thick of it. But yeah. But that's some of my key points.
The next piece of content is from episode 12, and we discussed how to succeed in interviews, both in person and online. And we talk about why it's important to research that practice before your interview. And we talk with Stephen Drew of the Architecture Social. He gives some real key advice here.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you can be individual, but you have to have a bit of common ground. And I think there's a few things that can be common ground. It can be what you speak about, but it can also be how you present yourself. And I think research is super important, Jason, as you mentioned. And yes, it's true. Look at videos, look at all this stuff. An easy way as well, Jason, is to look at teams pages on websites, and you can see quite quickly if they're wearing shirts, blazers, or cool, funky stuff. And then you can kind of tailor it around that. But another point that you mentioned is, doing that research before the interview. The other bit that's really good that constantly that I recommend people to do is to have a look at the current news that's going on with the practice. So, for example, if you're applying to Shepherd Robson, you'd quickly go on their website, you go on their news page, you see what's currently happening. And as well as that, if you find out before the interview who you're actually meeting, so saying now I'm meeting the residential team leader director who's going to be giving me the interview, then if there's any news that's to do with residential plans, that's a really good thing to talk about, isn't it? Thank you so much for me. Bea, David, I'm super excited. I saw the project that you've just worked on, and it's just gone through planning. That's amazing. There's a little bit of common ground then, and that shows that you've actually given, you've cared, you've gone a little bit above board, and it really helps make you look like you care and makes you look like you've researched. I mean, I'm amazed that sometimes when I speak to people, they can't even pronounce the name of the architecture practice correctly, and it's just little bits like that, or don't really know what they do. It's like, come on, you gotta do a bit of research. There's no excuse, Jason, is there?
You have, and what you've got to remember, you've put a lot of effort into your CV, into your portfolio that you sent with your CV, which is different to the portfolio that you will take into the interview. So you've done all of that work, and what we're trying to do here in this sort of discussion is to just think of all these slight tweaks, that can give you the best outcome. And what you said there, Stephen, it's just fantastic. Maybe look up the person on LinkedIn. You can go through their what they've worked on, which practices they've worked at, even, which might give you an understanding of them, or say they might have been with the practice for 30 years. So that they're going to be very much ingrained in that culture, but also they may have come from another practice that did interesting work that you could potentially talk about as well. So it's just making sure you're giving them, you're sort of building up maybe the conversation that you can have in the interview that you can just drop in there naturally, and that's the point, isn't it? You don't want to make it like, oh, I see you've worked at such and such a place. It's just something that you can drop in organically when the time is right, and you've got it in your back sort of pocket. That's the way I would approach it.
So that brings us to the end of season 2. Please watch out for some specials that may be happening over the summer period on the Global Architects Alliance. I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe. You could share this with other people, and I wish you all the best. And until we start their discussions again, have a great summer.
Thank you for listening. Please support the Global Architects Alliance by subscribing and sharing this podcast. Please also leave a rating. For more information of what the Global Architects Alliance does, please visit globalarchitectalliance.com.